Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Porman. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce, and today on Code Live we're going to be working with some inbound email handlers. Now this proved to be a really popular topic when we first covered them back in, I think, March. And it occurred to me, I was doing some cleanup of the repo and I found out that we never actually merged these recipes into Apex recipes. So bad on me. And today we're going to fix that. So we're going to work on some additional unit tests. We're going to clean it up, make it better. We're going to implement some of the other stuff we've done in Apex recipes here into inbound email handler recipes. And we're going to get this merged in so everyone can benefit from it. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at what we've got. Now, when I sit down to refactor or add things, I always like to go run my tests first. There's only one test case here, but I want to run it. You can see that it's green right now, but I've made a couple changes, naming things. Still green. And looks like we've got a success there, so good. All right, I like that. Now let's go ahead and look at what we can do. Let's see what's covered and not covered. Like I said, before we do that here, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to minimize these methods that are not unit tests. These are helper methods that are going and creating things like an email and an envelope and attachment, that sort of stuff. And here we have our actual unit test. It's a positive unit test, and it's an integration test. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. But if we look at our actual inbound email handler, let me get rid of that to give us some more real estate. You'll see that when I turn on the code coverage lines, we've got a try catch. We've got a catch block that's not covered. And we've got a negative result here where we aren't catching what happens if it's not a success. So there's that. Then we've got a guard here that is going to return. It's returning nothing, but we don't have that covered. So it looks like we've got create files by email attachments, negative testing to write. And it looks like we've got some get contacts by senders that we can check on unit test wise. And we've got a bunch of the stuff in here that we can write some unit tests on. And then we get down here at the bottom and we've got this validate CRUD permissions before SOCL that we're getting. And that's true. This is a best practice warning. It comes from PMD. And you can see here that the red X means warning. You really should fix this. So we're going to tackle that as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right in. What I'm going to do is I like to separate my code so that I have my code on the left, my unit test on the right. And I'm going to go up here and we see that we've got sort of this handle inbound email message method covered pretty much, except for the catch statement. So let's go ahead and write a negative unit test for that. Now remember your Your negative unit test pattern is to wrap your code calling in a try catch block, catching an exception that you expect to arrive, and handling that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at what would happen if we called void test handle inbound email negative no, let's say no sender found, no contact found. Okay. Now that's our unit test case, what we're going to be doing here. And you can see that Copilot has already thrown up a bit of code here. I don't want to necessarily use that, so I'm going to hit escape, make it go away. And you can see here that we've got to do a bit of work before we can do anything. We've got to create our envelope and our email. So I'm just going to copy pasta that up here. And you'll see that this is going to go and look for a contact ID. I'm going to skip that contact ID because what I want to do is call this without having that contact ID exist. Now, let's see, where are we using that contact ID? Are we using that at all in this test? Oh yeah, here down here, it's doing it as a linked entity ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to then call test.start test, and I always like to do test.start stop test right below it, go back in here and start coding this. And I want to call something very similar to this. This is basically what I want to call, but I'm going to do it in a try-catch block. Am I going to do it in a try-catch block, or am I just going to assert? Because here in our catch, we're catching the exception, and then we are setting the error message and returning that result. We're always returning from this, so we're not going to do try-catch, but we are going to assert that that failed. Now I want to go back up here at the top, because we've got our make data test setup method, and if you aren't familiar with it, the test setup annotation runs before each unit test, and it's going to create an account and contact for us. So what I want to do is I want to write my unit test here such that before I call start test, it looks for, I'm going to delete, and I'm going to do select ID from contact. Right, and that should get rid of all of my contacts. I'm not going to have anything in there. That's a shorthand way of just deleting everything related to that object. I don't need that to be capitalized. Okay, we'll just do it this way. So when this runs, I should fail right here. My contact's not going to find, and so this is going to fail. And I should end up with this being false. So we'll come down here, and after we run that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say test.assert equals, and I'm going to do result.success is false, and expected to receive a false. I can spell. Receive a false success property. Spelling is hard. Okay. How's everybody doing out there today? Anybody tuning in on the chat? We got success false, except, and then we can do another one that is going to say but it's going to be result message, and I'm going to expect this one to fail for right now, because I don't know what this message is going to be. We're going to have to pull it out of that, and we'll probably end up doing an assert and doing a contains equals. Oh, it's system.assert, not test.assert. Boom. All right. Got that going. Clear this out. Oh no, did it fail again? Is test method be static? Didn't I? Void static. There we go. My bad. Yep, static void. I just did void. Waiting. Okay. That seems to have succeeded. Why are we getting a test method? Yeah. So it doesn't like it having a underscore in it. It's a convention pulled over from Java, if I understand things correctly. And let's run this unit test. And while that's running, I'm going to tweet. We're going to do this. We're going to say, hey, at Salesforce Devs, join me live. Oops, it's Salesforce Developers. Join me live now at, and then it turns out I need that address, don't I? 1 second. Yep, okay, so our unit test failed to run. Let's see why. It's probably that one that I expected. false success property, expected true, actual false. Expected true, actual false. Did I do that backwards? System.assert equals expected, then the actual result. So the expected is false. And then we have result. That's success. Let's fix that so that our unit test will make sense in error messages. And do a quick tweet here. Put this up. That didn't work. I don't like it when I can't copy and paste things. Let's try that. Okay. Still failing on that assert. That's fine. Why are we getting a failure? So are we not catching an exception here? That could be. It could be that we're not throwing an exception. So let's look at get contact by sender. So this is going to return a new contact. So just having no contact won't work there. So let's go back up here and look at this, and then we're going to say create files by email attachment is void. Does it throw an exception? No. Okay, so that's not throwing an exception. Create email record. Create email record does not throw an exception either. So nothing in this code throws an exception. So what we can do, how do we want to handle that? So get contact by sender will always give us either a new contact or a existing contact. The create email record, I think, is where we want to fail this. So if we go down into the create email record, we're accepting the sender and the inbound email, and we're going to insert. So this is what would fail and throw maybe a DML exception that we would catch. Hey, Rostyle, I'm going to try and pronounce your name. It's probably going to be, I'm probably going to butcher it. I'm sorry. It's Rostislav. And then we go back to this here. We're going to create that email message relation. So one of these two things can fail on a DML exception. And if we have a DML exception, we're just going to throw that back up there and catch it. So what we need to do is engineer a DML exception. And let's look at our method here. How can we throw a DML exception in this? Because that's void, we could throw that away. So if we go up here and we do create email, let's look at our create email method. And our create email method is going to okay, so this is going to give us an email, and then if I take out a particular, say the from name and subject. So we do email dot from name equals and email dot subject equals. We've nullified those. We're getting rid of our. Actually, we don't need to worry about that because that's not going to cause anything. When we go to send this in, that email is going to have invalid fields. So this should throw a DML exception. And if it's right that it's a DML exception, then what we're going to do is we're going to update this to be DML exception. Okay. Let's run this test. Okay, it failed to run. Expected to receive a false success property. Expected false, actual true. Okay. When we have our int create email, can I just create a blank email? Let's try this. What is this? This is a messaging inbound email. Try that. Okay, now as what do we got going on up here? Method does not exist, void inbound email from the type message. Oh, that's because it's a equals new. There we go. So this should basically be an empty object. And when we go to create, we don't need create files by email address right now. We get contacts by sender, create email record. So we should be able to new email message, and we're getting it from, that's going to be null. I expect that to fail. Yeah, I expect that to fail. So if we run this test, what will happen? Okay. Okay, count trigger. Handle inbound email negative. Contact found account trigger. Do we have to bypass a trigger here? In our integration test positive, are we doing anything with the trigger framework? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't see it. So, about to bust out the debugger here, guys and gals. Native contact line 67, column 1. So if we go to 67, yep, column 1, that's fine. And count service layer, I'm not sure why we're in there. Oh, are we? All right, so our count service layer, our triggers are still in effect here. So what we're going to do, trigger handler dot bypass account handler account. Let's do this. Let's look it up. Trigger handler bypass. It's a new set of strings. Okay, so we've got that there, and let's open up our trigger and see which one's being called. Hi, Ross. Ross is easier. I don't have a great tongue for pronouncing. Actually, I don't have a lot of experience pronouncing Cyrillic names. Let's see. Let's go to our triggers here. Tests. Here are triggers. Our count trigger is calling. That's why it's calling it twice. And we're gonna bypass the account trigger handler. So we're going to do bypass account trigger handler. Turn that off. And let's see here. See if this helps us. Rerun. Run tests. Doot, doot, doot. Still failed. These are all in... It's a very confusing set of error messages we're getting in here because we're not seeing... Let's do also bypass. Bypass. What is it, this one? Okay, so we're going to create an account and contact. We're going to bypass those trigger handlers because we don't care about them in this testing context. So we're going to make our tests as isolated as we can. And as we run this, failed to run. The question is, why are we failing to run? Oh. We're not even getting there, we're just returning. Huh. So in our handle inbound, we're saying sender is get contact by sender. And our get contact by sender, I think I minimized that. Yeah, here we go. Get contact by sender is either going to give us the first one or create a new contact. And then down here we're saying if we don't have a sender ID, return. I think what we need to do is make an insert up here because get contact by sender should actually do the inserting. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say so we're going to say if contact size is greater than 0, return contact list 0. Otherwise, new contact with email is the sender address. We're just going to put that on the constructor. And we're going to insert this. Like that. And return that. Now, we could throw a DML exception on that, but now we should be able to get to the point where the email message is being parsed. Let's save that. Rerun our unit test here. I'm gonna get a drink while it does this. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And then this is superfluous now. We can get rid of this. Like me a good ternary, but it doesn't work there. All right, that's saved. Now we're going to run our test. Maybe. Failed. Let's see why it failed. No con. It failed on line 75. So let's look at what that is. Okay, so this assertion failed. We got a new assertion failure. This is great. And error code expected insert first exception on row 0, first exception required, field missing. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this up here, we're going to change this from exception to DML exception. We're going to do DMLE. Okay, and we'll save that there. And then over here, what we're going to do is we're going to say assert. I'm going to get rid of the equals. And what we're going to do is we're going to say the result message dot contains ignore case. And we have our message here. Required fields are missing last name. Okay, and we'll put that in there. And then we need a comma. That's what that's upset. Okay, we'll save that. Making progress. Okay, and so when we run this unit test, this should pass now. No whammy, no whammy, no whammy. Boom! Passing. Okay, so now if we go up to all the way to the top of this fat class and we run all of our unit tests, maybe. Does contact require a last name? It does. Contact requires a last name, which means that down here we should do last name. And that's going to be from, we're going to pull this from our sender address. Oh, I see what's happening. That's a good catch. That is a good catch. This is not doing what I thought it was doing. This is failing because we don't have a last name property on our contact that it's creating, and that's required. So we're never getting to this point. It's throwing that exception like we want, but it so if we have a net new contact with a new sender address, how do we create a contact that doesn't have a known last name property? And I believe, let's try this. So when we get our email, and we can check this when we create our email here, we've got from name. And so we can get contact by sender if we just remove from address here, make that send the entire email body in. When we go down here to our get contact by sender, we can do, what is email? Messaging inbound email. Okay, we'll change our method. We'll refactor this a bit to be inbound email. And we'll do email. And what we'll do is we'll say email dot, is it sender address? Email sender address. Otherwise, come down here and we're going to say email equals email dot sender address, and we can say last name is equal to email dot from name dot split which is going to give us an array of characters, and I want the last one. So let's extract this. Let's not do this all in one. That can get dangerous. So I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to do attempted last name. And our attempted last name is going to be string.attempted. Oh, somebody's coding it for me here. Brian says last name equals from name contains. Here, let me just copy that and we'll look at it here. Copy this. And we'll come back over here, and he's saying last name equals from name dot contains space yes from name split 1 else from name. That's true. That will normally work, except that there could be in situations where that won't work. Imagine you've got a last name of DeVry or Vanderklein, pulling names out. If you've got multiple words in the last name, that won't work. But I think that's a good enough attempt for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use your ternary. Thanks for throwing that in there. And I'm going to say attempted last name is equal to, and I like to put some spaces in here just to make it pretty. And yeah, typical last name there. And what's going to happen is I'm going to say this is going to be it's not from name, it's email.from name. Okay, and I'm just going to leave a nice big old note. This attempted last name calculation makes a series of assumptions about the nature and style of a last name. Maybe don't use in prod. I think that's a fair way of putting it. Okay, so we've got that there. We've got our disclaimer. And we're gonna, yeah, I think that's good. We need to put that there. We need to let this format itself to make it all pretty. Come on, prettier. Why have we not prettified this? Okay, variable does not exist. Equals. Helps if I get my syntax remotely correct. Attempted last name is equal to email. Email is available because it's right there. Invalid type, string message. It's just messaging. Let's do that. There we go. Now we formatted it. That's better. I was like, why is that not formatting? Now I know. From name, that's because it's email.fromName. And email.fromName. Okay. Look at that. We got a code, a bit of code here from somebody who joined us on stream. Brian, if you will tweet me at CodeFryer your GitHub username, I would love to attribute this to you so that you get the fame and glory that comes with being part of that. It does not have sender address. It's the from address. Boom. From hello Nigeria. From address. That's good. And that should be good. Saving. Failed to save. Does not like that. It does not like it at all. That's because it's also the wrong one. There we go. The moral of this story is, whenever possible, you should pass around fully fledged objects, not primitives, because then it makes it if you need to use something on that object, you just grab it. So we've got that there. Now you see this validate CRUD permissions thing, and this is bothering me because I've got a focus on security. So what we're going to do is we're going to say new safely dot do insert new contact, and we'll get rid of that, and we'll save that. And saving. You see we got rid of our error message there. I think that's good. Now we're going to go run this unit test again. Now this should still pass, right? Well, we haven't fixed this part, but the rest of it should pass. Okay, let's see. Failed. Attempt to dereference a null object. Of course it attempted to dereference a null object. On line 98, column 1. Yep. So what we need to do is make our... I made that a DML exception before, but it just needs to be an exception. And the reason it needs to be exception is because it could be a DML exception, or I guess actually the better way to do this would be catch. Can we catch a null pointer exception? Let's find out. NP. And I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna say error message equals attempt to dereference a null object. Okay, save that. Now we're going to catch that exception. Safe navigator. Ooh, Brian is firing on all cylinders today. Let's do that too. So down here, we're going to look at our, where is our method? Here we go. So we're going to go into this method where we're creating it, and we're going to say email.fromName, and we're going to put question mark in front of it. And then we'll do boom. So yeah, what do we do for this one? Because if it's null, then we could do just return an empty string, which would then lead back to our DML exception. So I think I'm okay with that. And then we're going to say email from address. So if our email from address is null, well, I'm virtually certain you can't get an inbound email. Well, you can if you just create it. This shouldn't ever be null. But since we are intentionally creating a null version of that, email equals email.from address. We'll just make it a ternary. Email.from address is email address is not null. We'll put this in parentheses so it can follow along at home. And then we'll say, if it's not null, use email address, otherwise use an empty string. And save that. Now I think we're actually not going to be getting an NPE, so we can probably get rid of that. Okay, and then let's clear this out. The safe navigation operator is one of my favorite things, but it's so new that I often forget that I have it in Apex. I'm used to it in Swift and in JavaScript, but you know, having it in Apex now is sort of like amazing. Let's see here. Attempt to dereference a null object on line 98, column 1. Okay, so it's in this one. We're going to go down to line 98 contains So true. Is it just not liking that ternary? Because this should evaluate that to either this one, which has a safe navigation operator, or that. Let's save that. Since we're working mostly in the test, I'm going to make this a little wider and clear that, and I'm going to run my test. Hello from Connecticut. Says defeat the purpose. That's a cheery nickname. I'm still going to attempt to dereference a null object. Let's decompose this a bit. If email dot from address or from name is not equal to null. You know what? I'm not even going to do null. I'm going to do string dot is blank is not blank email dot from name. Then, and we'll create a somebody says can the email is null. Email shouldn't be null. We're creating it as an object in our test, but it is a blank object. None of the properties are set, which is why I would expect email from name to be blank. If it is not blank, then attempted last name is equal to that, else attempted last name is there. Okay, so we've deconstructed this into a different way of checking that. Not using the save navigation operator, we're just using a standard if statement. Let's save that. And we'll run our test. Failed to run. Let's see. Expected to receive a false property. All right. Okay. So this unit test should have thrown a DML exception. It did not throw a DML exception because we are defaulting the email address and the attempted last name. So let's throw an exception. Let's give ourselves a inbound email handler recipes exception class. So we'll do public class inbound email handler recipes exception extends exception, and we will go down here to where this is and says throw new inbound email handler recipes inbound email handler recipes exception, and we'll say unable to create new contact for this sender because the email from name is blank. All right, so now we're throwing a specific exception. We got to fix this up here. It's not going to be DML exception. It's going to be a IEHRE. I love making up words like that. And we'll move those over here. Okay, save that. Yep, Olitan, you're doing string is not blank. That's exactly what I just switched to there. You're ahead of me. Imagine that. And we'll run this again. Maybe. Failed to run. Okay, so we're back to our custom, our bit here not working. Expected to receive an invalid email. We actually have a new message. The new message is down here in create contact. We're throwing unable to create contact. We'll just put this in here. And we're going to say expected to receive a inbound email handler recipes exception with the given message. Okay, we'll save that. Feeling good about this. Click that out again. All right, now we're going to run this test again. No whammies, no whammies. Woo! Okay, we have a passing unit test. Okay, now if we look here at our inbound email handler recipes, we've only got 32%. So let's go up here and run all of the tests, and we'll see what our unit test coverage is for everything. We were at 88%. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here, and we're going to look at, we're back at 88%. Okay. Let's refresh that. Is it still not? We've covered all of this, which I feel like gives us more coverage, but we've got this bit down here where we've got to cover a new contact being created. And wait, so string not blank, okay, and then we're going to insert that contact. We haven't gotten to that part because we haven't done one where we have a blank from name. So let's go here into our test. We're going to do no contact found. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back and say delete, select ID from contact. We're just going to delete all of our contacts. And when we do that, we should be triggering this other set of code, I think. So we will see how that works. We're going to run this, maybe. And we'll update our so that's throwing an exception. We're catching that exception. But this down here, we're not getting to this block because we are sending. Why is this saying he's not blank? Okay, because we need it to be blank. But if we come over here where we're sending our email, we're just doing a new mail, inbound email. And I guess we can say email.fromName and just do blank. That should set the email to be blank. That should pass then. And then yeah. We're still not getting this. Oh, that's because when we create our contact and make data. Oh no, it's going to be in our email. We're pulling it from the email. So create email. We've got a from name there. So if we, just got rid of this, but if I put this, take this back out, we're going to find the contact. We need an email with a from address, and then the from address is what we got to fill in here. So from address is equal to from email, and yeah, Manny Gandon, I'm really bad with pronouncing names. I apologize. It's something I'm trying to get better at, so that's why you hear me trying to pronounce everybody's name. But I'm not so great at it. But we're gonna run this here. I think this will get us in here. And no, because this one is going to throw that exception. So I guess we need a new test case. So let's get rid of, let's do this. And we're going to come out like that, come down here, and we're going to give it a new name. And this one is email negative, no contact found. It's not going to be no contact found. It's going to be new contact created. And we're going to have a from address and a from name that is not blank. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this out here. And I'm going to go over here and grab my create email bit. This will give us a email message that has a name and it'll have a from name. And then we also got one where attempted last name, but we need a not contact. We need to not have contacts. So we'll need to do delete ID from contacts, which should get us into this creating bit. And then down here, let's just run this and see where we get errors and exceptions. Because I think, is this really a negative test anymore? We're just testing a different path within create or get contact. So let's run this. Okay, so our exception failed. Expected false, actual true. And if we look at this, now we're not throwing that error, but we are creating this, which means that we come back up here. These are all passing, which is what we want. So what we want is to say result is equal to true. And expected to receive a true success property when a new contact is created. That's what we want, and we don't need this assertion because we're not receiving an exception. So we're not going to be able to inspect that exception. So now, if we run all of our unit tests, we should have higher than 88% code coverage because we've got some more branches. We've covered those branches. We're doing better. Now, I'm not one to say you have to go to 100% code coverage. I do think that getting to 90% code coverage is a good. Come on. There we go. Got that covered. Now, if we look at our, I gotta scroll all the way down. Inbound emailed handler recipes is covered at 100%. I didn't know we were going to be able to get 100%. That's interesting. We've still got these issues. So let's fix that while we're at it. So I'm going to do new safely. If you're not familiar with safely, this is our library for doing CRUD permission checks, etc. before doing a SOCL email operation. So we just do new safely, do insert email relationship object, and we'll save that there. And save that. That should give us, it's giving us 100% code coverage, which I like. It was more than I was targeting. The local variable name email relationship object is, okay, so this is giving me a naming error. So this is a fun trick I learned. If you hit F2 in Visual Studio Code, you can go say that and then hit enter, and it'll rename everything in scope. Super powerful. Less typing. So I'm a big fan about that. And email relation ID, great. I think that's good. And we've got 100% code coverage there, which is phenomenal. So I'm going to call that ready to go. Now we've got to do some other things here. We've got 6 minutes left, and that's good. We have, we have to clean up some of this stuff. Like we've got a description here, but we don't have a @group. And I'm going to say this is email recipes. And then we've got a C, and we're going to do, what should we reference here? We should do safely. We should do inbound email handler recipes tests. And there are other things that relate to this class. Not that are part of Apex recipes. We've got things like inbound email message, or messaging.inbound email, I mean. But that's not something we can reference in the docs here. So I think we're doing pretty good. We've got this create email record. I think we're doing good because safely is the only one that we're doing. We're going to reference the, actually it's going to automatically pull the test, so we don't have to worry about that. Demonstrates, let's get a better, demonstrates how to use the inbound email handler interface to create custom logic and automation on the reception of an email. This class demonstrates saving the email to an email message object. Is that the name of it? Let's go down here and look at this. Create email record, and it's an email message. Yeah, not crazy, or at least not for that. Email message object along with attachments. Oh, that's right. This is using our files recipes. So we'll do files recipes as a C. Okay, now should be able to save that. No big deal. I'm going to close our tests. We haven't changed any logic, so the test should pass just fine. And let's write a good commit note here. We're going to include inbound email handler recipes and inbound email handler recipes tests. Updates code coverage for inbound email handler recipes to 100%. Still too much on the integration recipes, integration testing side, but a good start. We'll save that. Okay, now we've got this set up so that when we save and commit something, it automatically creates an inbound, it automatically generates the docs for us. And so you can see here, this is the diff and the documentation that it created. It's got all of our methods. You see now that we switched away from string sender address to messaging inbound email. And so what we can do now is we can we can append this, or updated docs. Commit that. And now we're going to sync our changes up to the GitHub repo. Maybe. Yes. Thank you. All right. Now, if we go over to GitHub, we'll have a ability to create a new pull request with it. Inbound email has recent pushes less than a minute ago. Continue. I gotta authenticate. You know what? I'm gonna do this off screen. Just for, safety's sake. So let me authenticate. I have one of those passwords that I can't type and talk at the same time on. That's good, right? Okay, and I got to do the two-factor dance. It's like the safety dance, but it's the two-factor dance. You can dance if you wanna. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna drag this back over here. And here is our, what does this do? You'll see that, does not give my, what happened to the rest of my commit message? What does this PR do? Introduces inbound email recipes and tests. Test coverage is at 100%, but biases towards integration testing rather than unit testing. It does not do one of those, but it does fulfill those requirements. And code linting has been done. We're not going to fill out those sections because they don't apply. We'll create the pull request. All right, there you go. Okay, so we've got all this. It's going to run through our, we'll watch this run. This is our CI system set up so that it's going to go through and verify that I actually have linted my code and formatted it and fixed everything. Make sure that everything is working and is well formatted. And then I'm just going to run my unit tests. So you can see here it's going to run prettier against all my code. And here's our code formatting verification with prettier. It's in list different. So it's doing list different still. I just found out the other day that if you run prettier with list different, it'll just fail if there's an error, if something's not prettified. But if you run it with -- check instead of list different, it'll actually tell you what file failed. So I've been trying to switch everything over to -- check. And with that, it is 2:01. So I'm going to say adieu, and I will see you again next Thursday for Code Live. Thank you much.